Hi there, Zach with Vine Skills. This is a quick video demonstration of our Trust Check Request feature with QuickBooks Connect. Generally, the idea of this feature is your Filevine users have the ability to draft checks out of Filevine. They push into QuickBooks, where your QuickBooks users can print them and physically mail them out. This specific tool is for dispersing from your trust funds or from your settlement funds. And so these checks are configured to be written out of your trust account, and they're configured to reduce the client's total trust balance as they're drafted. Kind of the idea here. So in my example, I'm working in a Luke Skywalker case here, Luke Skywalker versus Lightsaber Industries. I did in QuickBooks just drafted a bank deposit. I can show you quick. Here it is. So we received a $10,000 settlement check for this case. I deposited into my trust bank account. I of course tagged my Filevine project, Luke Skywalker and Lightsaber Industries right here. And since I'm hitting my trust bank account asset, I'm always hitting my trust settlement liability account. So I'm tagging that here. And when I'm doing that, I get a nice balance here back in Filevine. So here's my $10,000 total trust account balance. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and proceed with drafting our disbursement checks out of this case. So this looks a lot like our check request for case costs, but we'll go ahead and walk through an example here. So let's go ahead and draft a check that we are writing to Luke Skywalker for his portion of the client award. Say it's $4,000. I'm gonna go ahead and find Luke Skywalker, who is the same as my contact on this case. So we'll go ahead and make sure that's the same. The first field here, this turns out to be the actual check memo. So this is what gets printed on the physical check that goes to the client. So I'll just call it check memo for spirit of example. The description field, this is just your accounting system historical description. So if you were to pull reports or look in your accounting data in the future, this will just be the description included there. I'll call it my general ledger description. Features is we can attach a copy of the Luke Skywalker signed settlement statement here. That pushes into QuickBooks as well. So if you have a different person working in QuickBooks who's kind of a second set of eyes reviewing that check, making sure the dollar amount's right, who you're paying is right, it agrees to the signed settlement statement before the money goes out the door. It's a really nice feature to go ahead and attach that there. This note section is for internal use. This does not push to QuickBooks, so it's just kind of if you have something to note within Filevine for your other Filevine users or your legal team, you can mark that there. Next, we do have a button it's called Ready to Create the Check in QuickBooks. You can say no and simply save this check. Nothing happens in QuickBooks yet. The reason we built in that feature is at the time you get the settlement statement signed, you're well aware of what all your disbursements are going to be, so you might want to tee them up. But you're of course not going to send the money out the door until you receive the settlement check. So this is kind of nice for teams that want to work ahead and draft their disbursements before the settlement check clears. As soon as the settlement check does clear, you can click back in. We can change that to yes. And then when we click save, the integration is going to queue on that. It's going to go ahead and draft this check in QuickBooks for us. Let's go ahead and take a look in QuickBooks. All right, so the quickest way to find a check is one, you can search your print queue. I'm just going to go to my expenses tab, and sure enough, here is the check that we just drafted. One thing to note here on the payee, when you are paying the same contact that is the primary contact on your case, what the integration is going to do is we're going to mark the payee as that client in QuickBooks rather than the vendor. The reason we do that is so you don't have duplicate clients as vendors and clients as customers in QuickBooks. So it just kind of keeps everything really clean. As long as you have I'll go ahead and show you this. I'm going to open a new tab and I'll close out here. I'm just going to navigate to Luke Skywalker in my client list and demonstrate a couple things real quick before we go back to the check. So I'm in my customer list. I'm on Luke Skywalker, and I just want to point out a couple things. So Luke is still the first name and Skywalker is still the last name. So even though our client display name is kind of this project name or the total case name and the Filevine project ID, these checks that are going to your client shouldn't have that kind of clunky name. You can see QuickBooks is bringing in the name to print on checks as first name plus last name, Luke Skywalker. Similarly, if you've got your address in there, the check is going to automatically be drafted to go to mail to that check. So anyways, just want to point that out. When I navigate back to the check that we were looking at, that kind of helps to explain why our payee is from our customer list, but our mailing address is still a nice name, Luke Skywalker, and the mailing address there. A couple other key things to point out here. This check by default is drafted to be written from your trust bank account. And of course, anytime we're hitting your trust bank account, we're also hitting your trust settlement liability. That way those accounts maintain the same balance all the time. So by default, we're hitting your trust settlement liability. By default, we're tagging that Filevine project. So this $4,000, of course, immediately reduces the trust balance for this client. A couple other key things, if I scroll down, that signed settlement statement is included here as attachment to QuickBooks. Again, your QuickBooks users can click on that, review the check, review the dollar amount, review who they're paying before they send money out the door. Nice little double check. And we're always checking print later by default. That way the check shows up in your QuickBooks user's print queue and just doesn't get lost in a sea of historical accounting transactions. If I hit save and close and I navigate in my in QuickBooks to my report section, just to kind of drill home the point here, I'm going to go to my trust settlement by client report, and I'm going to scroll down to Luke Skywalker, and you'll notice I have my $10,000 deposit, and then this check immediately reduced that total client settlement balance by $4,000. So if I navigate back into Filevine, and I navigate to my trust account section, go ahead and click the Update from QuickBooks Now button. Sync successful, we can close this window and just simply refresh our Filevine tab here. And sure enough, we'll see the new trust balance is $6,000. One other nice feature here I almost forgot to mention, if I navigate back into this check and I scroll down, there's a payment status section. So you'll notice since we pushed this check successfully into QuickBooks, this status of created automatically pushed back from QuickBooks, as well as this timestamp, which is a really nice feature. Once that check gets printed, we'll push back the printed status, which will also include the date of the check and the check number. If the QuickBooks user voids the check, we'll also push back the voided status.